and welcome to another video. In today's video it's going to be a little different to my usual style. Normally I'll teach you how to do something and make a project. But in today's tutorial I'm going to teach you how to fix problems. If you're a beginner crocheter, you may come across these problems. Even if you're not a beginner and you've been crocheting for a long time, you can still come across these problems, and I'm going to show you how to fix them. So you're making a project, and let's say you're making a blanket or a scarf or something that's got to be square or rectangle, and it's supposed to look like this, you know, straight across the bottom, straight edges, straight across the top. So basically straight edges. But when you crochet it, something goes wrong and it looks more like this. Now trust me, I have made plenty of these. And you're thinking, what am I doing wrong? I'm crocheting across, but somehow I've gone from 16 or 17 stitches and now I've only got 12 stitches. But you think that you're doing it correct. Well, obviously you're not, because if you started with, say, let's just say 20 to round it off. You've started with 20 stitches down the bottom and you're ending up with 16 up here. Somewhere you've lost some stitches, right? Because it's just simple maths. If you've not got the same amount that you had when you started, something's happened. You've lost a stitch somewhere. And you can see on this side, see how it goes in here? That's definitely where you've lost some there. And then it comes back out. So you've probably added some back in without even knowing. And the same on this side. You've got this slanting, it's going slanting in. But you're not sure why or how you even did it in the first place. So I'm going to show you what you've done wrong and how to keep track and make sure that you get your edges nice and straight. Trust me, like just recently I was making the fringe bag tutorial and I had to work my side straight, so it should have looked like this one. But I was a few rows on, I've looked and I've got this bit here where I've lost some stitches, and I was like, what? So stitch markers, we are totally colour coordinated today. Stitch markers come in many different designs. They can be clip-on ones, they can be these, whatever these are called. You can get ones that have a little clasp on them, or you can just use a piece of yarn. I am going to use the clip-on stitch marker for this project because it stays in place and it's not generally going to fall out, and it's very easy to undo. When we crochet along, we're going to put the one that's a bit wonky to the side, and we're going to continue with this piece here. We're just going to pretend that this row at the top here is our very first row, and it might have said chain 20, and I'm thinking this is a half double crochet I've used. Yeah, it's a half double crochet, and it might say, you know, half double crochet backwards across the row. Doesn't matter if you're using single crochet, it doesn't matter if you're using half double crochet or just a double crochet. It's very easy to forget that very last stitch, and generally that's where you're going wrong. You're forgetting this last stitch, and it's the chain that you made and you've forgotten to go into it. So what I like to do is, let's, again, what I said is pretend that we haven't done all this part here and we've just done our first row. We're going to turn our work around, and it's going to ask you in your pattern to work back in the other direction. Now if this is a single crochet or a half double crochet, what I like to do is do the chain. So it was probably going to say chain 1 or chain 2 in your pattern, and then it's going to say to crochet into the next stitch. So you miss this one because the chain already counts as one, and you crochet into this next stitch here. And what happens is this tiny little chain here that you can't even see now, it's disappeared. It literally disappears, and you've got to crochet into that when you come back across, and I totally forget. So if it is asking you to chain 2 for a half double crochet pattern and then crochet into the next stitch like that, we're just working a half double crochet. This chain here is where you need to crochet back into. So this is what a pattern might tell you to do. I'm just going to get my stitch marker ready. But I do mine a different way, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. So your chain 2 is your second chain that you made. So the first one's there and the second one's there. We're going to put our stitch marker into our chain there. And we know when we come back across, we've got to crochet into this one and also that stitch marked there. but it gives you an edge and you'll have that little hole like that. So I don't particularly like doing it that way. This is how I always do mine. So for this one I did half double crochet. I'm just going to pull my chains out and start again. Oops, that should be at the back. So this is what I do. If it's a single crochet or a half double crochet, it doesn't matter. The stitch that you're working with, you'll make your chain. I don't do it too tight, so I just sort of pull up slightly and then do my chain. Then I work my stitch I'm working with, so if it's single crochet or half double crochet, I work one in that very first stitch there. I grab my stitch marker and I mark the stitch that we just did, the half double crochet stitch, which is there. And I ignore the chain that I made, and that does not count as a stitch. So I'm using half double crochet, so I'm just going to work my way across. We're going to work to the other end. And we're going to crochet all the way. And your pattern might say to you, you're going to have X amount of stitches. So let's just say that you have 20 stitches in your first row. My yarn is getting stuck, sorry guys. So you're crocheting across, and let's say, like I said, you should have 20 stitches on your first row. So then if it's just a rectangle or a square, you're going to have 20 stitches per row. So you want to count across and make sure you have your 20 stitches. Your first stitch is the one that we've marked, which is over here. You're going to count your way across. You're going to come to the end and you might miss this chain. If you miss this chain, which will be from your very first row, that's where you're going to go wrong. So your next row will have 19 stitches because you didn't do the last one. So now we're going to do our chain. So I do a chain 1 and turn. You can turn and chain 1 or chain 1 and turn, it's up to you. So I've done my first chain, and now I'm going to work my stitch into that first stitch, which is that hole that you can see there. So yarn over, go in that stitch and work my half double crochet. Going to need another stitch marker, and we're going to put this in the stitch that we just made. So we'll just grab the loops. So the chain that we just made is here, but we haven't marked that. We've marked the very first stitch. So if that's single crochet or if it's half double crochet, you can work in there. If you're working a double crochet stitch, you can chain 3, or there is an alternative double crochet method, and I'll put a link in for that one. That's not my video, so I will link to that. I've tried it a couple of times and it works really well. So we all have different ways of doing the beginning of our project. But if you're going to do a chain 3 or the alternative double crochet, you will not work in that first stitch again, because otherwise that will give you 2 stitches. So we're going to half double crochet across. And this is what I was doing on my project where I said I went wrong. I was using half double crochet. And even though I know what the stitch looks like when I get to the end, apparently I couldn't see properly because it kind of hides. And when you're just crocheting across, you just think that it's the end, and it's really not. So I'm going to crochet in this one. You can see I've got one more stitch to go. Because we marked the stitch, we know that we have 1 stitch left, but I'm just going to take the stitch marker out and just sort of squash it together. Can you see now? Now, if you're a beginner, you're probably going to say no. If you're more advanced, you may see where the stitch is. But where's the stitch that we need to go into? It doesn't stand out really well. Like, it's not obvious where we need to go. I know, because I've crocheted for so long, that stitch there is where we need to go. But if you're watching TV or you're not really concentrating, you're just going to think, yep, I'm at the end of the row because look, it looks like it all lines up. But it doesn't, because if you miss that last stitch, trust me, you can end up with that really strange shape that I showed you before. So we're going to crochet into that one. we're going to turn our work around and we are going to chain 1 and yarn over, go into that very first stitch, and again we are going to mark the stitch that we just made. So just turn it towards you slightly, it's those loops there. And again you're going to work across, and when we get to the other end you'll have your stitch marker, which this was the first stitch of the previous row, but now because we've turned and worked across, it's the last stitch of this row that we're working now. So you know when you get to this stitch, you know you need to crochet into that. And that is how to keep your sides straight and not like that. Oh dear, it is all learning. If you're just starting, don't get frustrated with it. It's part of learning, and by making mistakes you'll learn what you did wrong and it will help you become a better crocheter. Believe me, it is true. So I hope that helped you, and if you've ever made this shape, leave a comment down below to let everybody know that if they're just starting out, that it's not just them that's made that mistake. There's thousands and thousands of us that have created a new shape like this. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that little video. If you're a beginner, just stick with it. Lots of practice. Thanks for watching, guys. Till next time, happy crochet.